In this video, we're going to take a couple opportunities to not only use the quadratic formula, but to simplify our answers once we have the roots of our quadratic function. In this case, we have 7x squared plus 8x plus 2 equals 0. Setting it equal to 0 basically tells us that's where we're going to reach the x-axis if we were to graph this function. So let's identify our a, b, and c here. A, B, and C. A is 7, B is 8, and C is 2. So remember, our quadratic formula says the opposite of B plus or minus the square root of B squared minus 4AC all over 2A. So that would be the opposite of B. That would be a negative 8 plus or minus the square root of B squared minus 2AC. So that would be 8 squared minus, I said 2, but I meant 4, minus 4 times 7 times 2, because 2 is part of my C. And all of that is going to go over the quantity 2 times A, or 2 times, in this case, 7. And that will give us the vertex. If I were to just look at the yellow part of that, analyze the yellow part of that, that would tell me something very specific about the graph of my equation, and the same thing if I were to just analyze the green part of it here. And that's going to be in an upcoming video, what those two parts mean. But for now, let's see what our roots are. And we'll do that by simplifying this expression. So that'll be negative 8 plus or minus the square root of, okay, let's see, 8 squared is 64. Negative times a positive is a negative. 8 times 7 is 56. And we're going to put all over 2 times 7, which is 14. Okay, let's keep going from there. So that means that we'll have the opposite of 8 plus or minus the square root of, let's see, 64 minus 56 is going to be 8. And that's going to be over 14. Now you might be tempted here to think you're done because you can't simplify that any further, but in fact we can simplify the radical, and then we can use that information to simplify the entire expression. Remember, 8 is, let's go ahead and do this real quick, 8 is 2 squared times 2, and because we have 2 squared times 2, that 2 from the square, that 4, 2 is the square root of 4 is 2. So we've got negative 8 plus or minus 2 radical 2 over 14. Now it might be easier at this point because we can still simplify this, and it might be easier at this point to look at this as two separate fractions. I have negative 8 over 14 plus or minus 2 radical 2 over 14. Now it's a little bit easier to see because 14 is just 2 times 7, whereas 8 is 2 times 4. And again, 14 again is 2 times 7. And here, when we look at it this way, 2 over 2 cancels to a negative 4 over 7 plus or minus. 2's again cancel to just the radical 2 over 7. And we can recompose that if we wanted to be the opposite of 4 plus or minus radical 2 all over 7. Your answer is not complete until you are that simplified. So always, the same as we've been talking about from day one, factor and then simplify. Factor and then simplify. Always factor and simplify. Let's take a look at the next one. The next one here says x squared plus 13 is 6x. And first we'll have to set this equal to 0. So let's subtract 6x from both sides, and what we'll get is x squared minus 6x plus 13 equals 0. Now we can identify our a, b, and c. A is 1, b is negative 6, and c is 13. So we have the opposite of negative 6, which is 6 plus or minus the square root of, let's see, negative 6 squared minus 4 times 1 times 13 all over 2 times 1. 2 times 1. Alright, let's simplify that bad boy. we've got 6 plus or minus the square root of 36 minus, let's see, 13 times 4 is, let's do that over here, 13 times 4 is 12, carry the 1, 52, all over 2, and oh, this is going to give me something interesting, because when I subtract 52 from 36, I will get a negative 16, and that's going to be over 2. So I've got that negative radical, and that negative radical, and you'll find out in a future video, means that I do not have a real root. I do have two non-real roots, but we can simplify that, because we know that the square root of a negative number is the square root of that number times I, and that's going to be over 2. And we know what the square root of 16 is. The square root of 16 is 6 plus or minus 4I, and that we will put all over 2. Now, because this complex number has, or these complex numbers have a real number part and an imaginary number part, we have to separate them. So it'll be 6 over 2 plus or minus 4I over 2, and because we've got that 6 divided by 2 is 3, plus or minus 4 divided by 2 is 2I, and that will be our solution. X is 3 plus or minus 2I. Not real numbers, so we're not going to cross the x-axis, but we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. Let's do one more. I have x squared plus x plus 2. Pause the video and tell me what A, B, and C are. Thank you for pausing. I'm going to go ahead and tell you now that A is 1, B is 1, and C is 2. So x will be the opposite of B, plus or minus the square root of B squared, minus 4 times A times C, all of it over twice of A. And in this case, we've got negative 1 plus or minus the square root of 1 squared is 1, minus 8, all over 2 times 1 is 2. So negative 1 plus or minus radical 1 minus 8 is negative 7, all over 2, which is to say that I have negative 1 plus or minus radical 7 times I over 2. And because we have a real number part again and an imaginary number part, we typically separate those. It'll be negative 1/2 plus or minus the square root of 7 over 2 times I, and that would be your solution.